air of the purified. His child, even the Buddha's very son. For I have plunged into the eightfold stream. And every evil thing I have washed away. The threefold wisdom have I found and won. And all the Buddha remains us do is done. Thera. Vakali. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Vakali. Reborn in the time of our Lord at Savathi in a Brahmin clan, they named him Vakali. When he had grown wise and had learnt the 3 Vedas, and was proficient in Brahman accomplishments, he saw the Lord. Never sated by looking at the perfection of the Lord's visible body, he went about with him. And when in his house he thought, I shall not here get a chance of seeing him constantly. So he entered the monk's order, and spent all his time, except at his meals and toilet, doing nothing else but meditating the Exalted One. The Lord, waiting for the maturity of his insight, for a long while made no comment. Then one day he said, What is to you, Vakali, this foul body that you see? He who sees the path, he it is that sees me. For seeing the path he sees me, and seeing me he sees the path. At the Lord's words, Vakali ceased to look, but he was unable to go away. Hence the Lord thinking, This bhikkhu, if he get not deeply moved, will not awaken, said on the last day of the rains. Depart, Vakali. Thus reminded, he could not stay. But thinking, What is life to me if I cannot see him? Climbed the vulture's peak to a place of precipices. The Lord, knowing what Vakali was about, thought, This bhikkhu, finding no comfort away from me, will destroy the conditions for winning the topmost fruits. And revealing himself as a glorious divine image, spoke thus. Now let the bhikkhu with exceeding joy, delighting in the Buddha's way and wisdom, go up onto the holy, happy path, where things worldly never excite him more. And stretching forth his hand, he said, Come, bhikkhu. The Thera, filled with mighty joy and rapture at the thought. I see him of the 10 powers, and mine is it to hear him say, Come, came to himself and realized what he was doing. Rising in the air, he stood on the nearest point of the hill while he pondered on the Lord's verse. Then arresting his rapture, he realized arahantship, together with grasp of the form and meaning of the path. This is what is recorded both in the Anguttara commentary and in that on the Dhammapada. But here they say as follows. Addressed by the Lord, What is to you? Vakali lived on the vulture's peak, establishing himself in insight, and descending into the avenue of that by the might of his faith. The Exalted One, knowing this, gave him a special exercise which he could not achieve, and, from insufficient food he suffered from cramps. Knowing him thus suffering, the Exalted One went and asked him, You who are down with cramping pains, lives in the jungle, in the woods, your range confined, in hardship dreadful, tell me, bhikkhu, how will you live? And the Thera, declaring his constant happiness through unworldly joys, replied, With bliss and rapture's flooding wave, this mortal frame will I suffuse. Though hard and rough what I endure, yet will I in the jungle live. In this myself I'll exercise. The starting points of mindfulness. The powers 5, the forces 2. The factors of enlightenment. So will I in the jungle live. For I have seen what friends have done. Their striving aroused, their straining mind. Their staunch and ever onward stride. In concord bound, and having seen. Even in the jungle will I live. Remembering him, the awakened one. Supremely tamed, intent, serene, with mind unwearied night and day. Thus will I in the jungle live. Thus saying, the Thera developed insight, and then it was that he won arahantship. Thera: Vijitasena. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys. Vijitasena. Reborn in this Buddha age in a Kosalan elephant trainer's family, he was named Vijitasena. His maternal uncles, Sena and Upasena, had both entered the monk's order and become arahants. When Vijitasena, after learning the craft of his folk, saw the twin miracle of the Lord, believed, and being naturally of a religious disposition, entered the monk's order under his uncles. Training by their instructions, he rose into the avenue of insight, but his mind remaining discursive through various external objects, he addressed it. I will restrain you, mind, as elephants are by the towngate's sallyport kept back. I'll not abet you in your naughty ways. You net of wishes, you of body born. Not your it will be, thus checked, to go at large. As elephant that wins not through the gate. Struggle your best, you which, again, you shall not roam, who are to sin so glad. Even as one who firmly wields the hook, did turn the unbroken, untamed elephant against its will, so will I turn you back. As the good driver, in horsebreaking skilled, did tame the mettle of the thoroughbred, so will I bring you to beneath control, by virtue of the fivefold spiritual force. Yes, by right meditative attentiveness I'll bind you fast. Myself restrained, so will I lord you. Curbed in the harness of right energy. You shall not, O my heart, go far from me. Thus restraining his thoughts did the Thera expand insight and win arahantship. Thera: Vijitasena. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys. Vijitasena. Reborn in this Buddha age in a clan of Malla Rajas, and named Vijitasena, he was educated at Takasila. Thereafter, making a tour with the wanderer Sabya, they came to Savathi, where Sabya put questions to the Exalted One. Vijitasena listened to the answers, thinking as he took his seat, eager to criticize. I will show the defects in the Samana Gautama's discourse. Now the Exalted One knew what was in his mind, and at the end of the Sabya Sutta, addressed him in these verses. Who witless and with criticizing mind, did hear the conqueror's doctrine told? Far, far from the true path is he, as from the heaven is the earth. Who witless and with criticizing mind, did hear the conqueror's doctrine told? From the true path he declines away, as in the month's dark half the moon. Who witless, etc. In the true path he withers up, as fish where water runs low. Who witless, etc. In the true path he did not thrive, as rotten seed in furrow sown. He who with glad contented mind, did hear the conqueror's doctrine told. He, throwing out the intoxicants, did realize the influctuate, did win the peace too great to express, and is perfected, sane, immune. Thus addressed by the Lord, Vijitasena was filled with emotion, entered the monk's order, and, establishing insight, in due course won arahantship. And in declaring Anna he uttered these very verses. Thera: Sena Khuddhaka. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys. Sena Khuddhaka. Reborn in this Buddha age in the country of Avanti in the family of a very wealthy counselor, he was given the name of Sona. Wearing ear jewelry worth a crore, he became known as Koti, or Kuti Kana. Grown up, he became a landowner. And when the venerable Kakana the Great stayed near his house, he ministered to his wants, learned the path, and finally growing disturbed, entered the monk's order through him. Collecting with great difficulty a company of 10, he soon took leave of the Thera to go to Savathi and salute the Lord. Being admitted to pass the night in Tbe Lord's portion, and in the morning invited to recite, he was commended for the 16 Atharkas. And when the verse, "Seeing the evils of a worldly life," was finished, he developed insight and won arahantship. And when he had obtained the Lord's consent to the 3 matters which Kakana the Great had commissioned him to ask, he returned to his own living place, and told the Thera his instructor. This is recorded more fully in the Udana and Anguttara commentaries, but there it is said that he attained arahantship while studying under his teacher. Soon, while living in the bliss of emancipation, he reviewed his achievement, and full of joy he breathed out these verses. Not only did I initiation into monkhood win. Emancipated am I, sane, immune. Yes, him have I now seen, the exalted one, and where he lived, there with him did I lodge. Far through the night he stayed beneath the sky. Then, versed in everything, the Lord in his chamber went to rest. His robe spread Gautama and laid him down, like unto lion in a rocky cave, for whom all fear and dread have passed away. Thereafter in the presence of the chief, the awakened one, did Sona, framing goodly speech, disciple of the Buddha, speak the path. Well did he know the factors of this life. Well did he cultivate the Aryan way. So, having won to that most perfect peace, shall he complete becoming sane, immune. Thera. Kosia. Adapted from the archaic translation by Mrs. Rhys Davids. Kosia. Reborn in this Buddha age in a Magadhan Brahmin's family, he was called by his family name. Kosia. Come of age, he often went to hear the general of the path teaching, and by that, believing in the doctrine, entered the monk's order, and in due course won arahantship. Upon that reviewing his achievement, he expressed the venerableness and determining power for good of the wise in these verses. He that is valiant and learned in the word of the masters, in that can rest and therefore can cherish affection. Him you may call devoted and wise. Thus he may be one that wins distinction in knowledge of doctrines. Him, whose firm philosophy hardship unparalleled testing has no power to disturb or bewilder. Him you may call strong-willed and wise. Thus he may be one that wins distinction in knowledge of doctrines. He who remains as ocean unyielding, unfathomed, as to his insight in problems subtle and delicate. Him you may call inexpugnable, wise. Thus he may be one that wins distinction in knowledge of doctrines. Erudite, one who bears the word in his memory. Practices he all doctrine, greater and lesser. Him you may call all this and wise. Thus he may be one that wins distinction in knowledge of doctrines. He who knows the meaning of that which is spoken, knowing the meaning, shapes his actions accordingly. Meaning with inside, call him and wise. Thus he may be one that wins distinction in knowledge of doctrines.